The courtroom was unusually tense that afternoon, the kind of silence that hums beneath the weight of family matters. Jessica stood stiffly at the plaintiff's table, her posture caught between defiance and nerves. At 18, she was technically an adult, but the stubbornness in her eyes carried all the rebellion of a teenager, still fighting her parents' rules. Behind her sat her mother, lips pressed tight, arms crossed, as if she were bracing herself for yet another storm. Across the aisle stood her father, Bob Thompson, tall and composed in appearance, but betraying his unease with the constant shifting of his weight. His jaw clenched, as though holding back years of resentment. Beside him was his second wife, Rhonda, her hands folded in front of her, but her eyes scanning the room like a soldier ready to defend her position. When Judge Judy entered, the murmurs of the audience fell away instantly. She slammed her gavel once, her gaze darting between the fractured family members, like a hawk circling prey. "Excuse me," she said sharply, turning to the young woman. "Are you her mother?" Jessica nodded toward the woman behind her. "Yes, I am," the mother replied, stepping forward reluctantly when summoned. Judge Judy's eyebrow arched. "And that's your father?" "Yes," Jessica answered softly, her voice echoing just enough in the hushed chamber. The audience let out a low sigh, as if they already sensed that this was not merely about a piece of jewelry, but about a daughter caught between two parents who had never stopped fighting. Even after their marriage ended more than a decade ago, Judge Judy leaned forward, hands folded on the bench, her voice cutting through the stale courtroom air. "So let me understand this," she began. "You are suing your father because you say he owes you a class ring." Jessica nodded, chin lifting slightly, as though the gesture itself carried conviction. "Yes." The judge tilted her head, her eyes narrowing with the kind of scrutiny that peeled away excuses. "How long have your parents been divorced?" Jessica hesitated, glancing at her mother before answering. "Since I was 5. Judy arched an eyebrow. "And you're 18 now?" "Yes." The judge tapped her pen against the file in front of her, already sensing layers beneath the surface. "For most of that time, you lived with your mother?" "Yes." A pause. "But there came a time when you left your mother's house to go live with your father." The girl nodded again, a little more cautiously. "I was 17. The air tightened as Judge Judy turned her gaze to the mother. "Why did she leave?" The woman's lips thinned. "We had an argument." Judy's eyes flickered with impatience. "Not just one, I assume." The mother gave a brittle laugh. "Typical mother-daughter fights. Clean your room, do what I ask, those kinds of things." But Jessica's father stepped in suddenly, his voice low but heavy. "She called me in a panic, said she was sick of being told to stay home from school, to babysit her sister, tired of sharing a room with her aunt and her cousins. She wanted a better life." He spoke with the conviction of a man who believed he had rescued his daughter, but Judge Judy's gaze sharpened like a blade. "And you didn't pick up the phone to call your ex-wife." Silence. The audience murmured softly, shifting in their seats. Judy's voice cracked through the room like a whip. "Teenagers in this situation always lie. Always. And you, sir, made your first mistake the moment you believed every word without hearing the other side." For a time, things at her father's house seemed almost perfect. Jessica was enrolled in a new school, where she quickly found herself cast in the drama club's productions, rehearsals filling her afternoons with the thrill of performance. She attended church programs with her father and stepmother, where smiling faces welcomed her, giving her a sense of belonging that she had missed for years. There were dinners around the table, Sunday mornings dressed in neat skirts, and phone calls to new friends who treated her like family. For a while, Memphis felt like freedom, but Judge Judy knew what was coming. "And then, sir," she pressed. The father's lips tightened. Then it all began to fall apart. It started with something small. At least, small in the eyes of a teenager. Jessica had gone to a record store with the girl who lived across the street, and together they had bought a CD by a band called Cake. The title seemed harmless enough, but in the Thompson household, music was no light matter. When Jessica slipped the CD into the car stereo on the way home and played one particular track twice, her friend sat stiffly beside her. The neighbor girl came from a deeply religious family, and the profanity and sly innuendo of the lyrics unsettled her. Later, she told Jessica's stepmother. The betrayal stung, but the confrontation that followed was worse. Jessica denied everything. She hadn't played it. She didn't even like that song. But her father and Rhonda were firm. The girl was lying. The denial itself was treated as the greater sin. Her father's verdict was swift. Jessica was grounded. For a week, no after-school activities with her friends. No phone calls after 8. In his mind, the punishment was modest, measured, an old-fashioned consequence for dishonesty. But to Jessica, it was a prison sentence. A reminder that even in this new household, she was still shackled by rules that seemed petty and cruel. The air in the Thompson home thickened with tension. Jessica slammed doors. Rhonda raised her voice. Bob tried to mediate, but only fanned the flames. And then came the breaking point. The day Jessica was scheduled to rehearse with the play production group. She came home to grab lunch before heading back out, only to find herself blocked at the door by Rhonda. What began as words quickly turned into force. Jessica claimed she was grabbed by the arms, shoved against a wall, even pressed into a chair with Rhonda's knee pinning her. Rhonda's account was cooler, calmer. She had simply restrained a defiant teenager from storming out until Bob could get home. But in Jessica's telling, it was no less than an assault. Proof that her father's house was no safer than her mother's. The courtroom audience gasped at the tension, their eyes darting from Jessica to her stepmother, waiting to see which version Judge Judy would believe. By the time the story reached the subject of the class ring, the courtroom had become a battlefield of words. Every glance between mother, father, and daughter charged with years of unresolved anger. Jessica stood straighter now, her voice sharpening as she declared that her father had promised to pay $300 for the ring, a symbol of her high school graduation, a keepsake every other senior in her class would own. To her, it was proof that he believed in her future, a token of support after all the shifting between households. But her father's reply was cold, firm, almost unshakable. I told her she had to earn it. She wasn't even graduating from the Memphis school anymore. She left before finishing. Why should I buy a ring for a school she abandoned? His words were laced with the bitterness of betrayal. He reminded the court that he had already spent thousands on legal fees, trying to provide Jessica with a home, only to watch her rebel, lie, and accuse his wife of abuse. He looked at Judge Judy as if begging her to see through what he believed was manipulation. But Judy's expression gave nothing away. The mother, when pressed, admitted something that drew gasps from the audience. In a moment of rage months earlier, she had written a sworn letter legally disowning Jessica, refusing to take responsibility for her anymore. She had even kept her daughter's belongings locked away, a punishment for daring to leave her house. The room fell into uneasy silence. Judge Judy's voice sliced through it like a blade. You, both of you, are adults, yet you've played tug-of-war with this child as if she were property. When she was with you, she was an angel. When she was with you, she was a demon. The truth is, she played you both like a fiddle, but the tragedy is that you let her. Her gavel tapped lightly, a warning more than a conclusion. She turned back to Jessica. You're not getting the ring. You didn't graduate from that school. and your father is not obligated to buy you jewelry because you think you deserve it." Jessica opened her mouth as if to argue, but the judge raised a hand, silencing her instantly. The judgment was swift. Case dismissed. Yet the real verdict lingered in the room, long after the official decision. Jessica's face flushed with humiliation, though pride kept her eyes dry. Her mother exhaled sharply, as if the outcome vindicated her, but the tension in her folded arms betrayed lingering guilt. Her father leaned back in his chair, expression caught somewhere between victory and defeat, while Rhonda's lips pressed into a thin, grim line. Judge Judy gathered her papers with finality, her words echoing in the stunned silence. "The saddest part of this case isn't about a ring. It's about two parents so consumed with punishing each other that they forgot what it means to raise a daughter. Shame on both of you." The gavel came down one last time, and the family, fractured and wordless, filed out of the courtroom, leaving behind the heavy truth that there were no winners here. Only three people bound together by blood and bitterness, their scars deeper than any judgment could heal.